It's a crisp September morning in New York City, 2001. The Twin Towers loom over Manhattan, their steel and glass shimmering in the dawn light, a testament to human ingenuity. Commuters hustle through the streets, grabbing coffee, unaware that history is about to fracture. Then, a gut-wrenching roar, a plane crashes into the northern tower. Smoke spirals upward, screams pierce in the air. Then a second plane strikes the south tower. As the world watches, something unthinkable unfolds. The towers don't buckle or crash in a cascade of debris. They dissolve like sandcastles swept away by an invisible tide. 110 stories of steel and concrete reduced to dust in midair. To the untrained eye, it's a collapse, a tragedy explained away by fire and impact. But to the trained eye of a scientist or an engineer, it's a baffling anomaly. Holy shit. Anomaly. It's a baffling anomaly that defies every law of nature. How did 1 million tons of material vanish without a trace? If you listen to the evidence carefully enough, it will speak to you and tell you exactly what happened. If you don't know what happened, keep listening until you do. The evidence always tells the truth. The key is not to allow yourself to be distracted away from seeing what the evidence is telling you. Empirical evidence is the truth that theory must mimic. That is by Dr. Judy Wood, and this episode is a summary of what Dr. Judy Wood said in her book, Where Did the Towers Go? I've dedicated a whole month to going over this book in my book club, Almanac on Circles, the Forbidden Book Society, because this is a shocking topic, guys. Like, buckle up, because this one will fundamentally reshape how you think about this event. Dr. Judy Wood has a degree in civil engineering, has a master's degree in engineering mechanics and applied physics. She has a PhD in materials engineering. According to Dr. Wood, the towers did not collapse. They vanished. They disintegrated into dust before they even hit the ground. Except for her, nobody can explain why. People want to say controlled demolition, the fire from the planes, this and that. But this is the most scientific-based argument I've heard of in regards to what happened here. I'm going to give you the most shocking scientific information from this book, and I want to know what you think about it. Dr. Judy Wood claims that a direct energy weapon was used to take down the towers. And the following is the argument that supports that. So, first of all, they collapsed way too fast in under 10 seconds, faster than a free-falling object in a vacuum. Now think about that. 110 stories of steel and concrete, 500,000 tons each, gone in the blink of an eye. That's impossible under gravity-driven collapse models. The floors should have pancaked and shown some form of resistance. Instead, they dissolved, leaving almost no rubble. Where did 1 million tons of material go? Dr. Wood says it was dustified, turned into ultra-fine particles by an unknown force. So we're going to get into that. But before I explain what the dustification means, here's a few other things. You know the horrifying sight of all the people jumping out of the buildings? What if they didn't jump and they were in fact launched out of the building? That sounds insane, but listen to this. So the haunting mystery of the jumpers, we've seen the images, the people falling from the towers, but Dr. Wood asks, did they jump or were they launched? Take the man in the orange shirt falling midair as if he was trying to regain balance. Not the controlled descent of a deliberate leap, but the chaos of a sudden expulsion. And he wasn't alone. Some bodies landed far from the towers beyond what any world record long jumper could achieve. Were people propelled from the towers? Now, even crazier, none of them carried personal items. No phones, no wallets, no pictures. Unlike a planned act, they seemed almost ambushed. Caught off guard, eyewitnesses described it as raining people. One every second. One estimate said that 1,200 people in total jumped out of the building that day. That's almost half of the total people that died. First responders heard no planes. They just saw bodies and clothing falling. And there was no aircraft debris in sight. If you want to further explore that, check out my iceberg video about this topic. And then you have the iconic falling man, possibly Jonathan Brearley, looks entirely relaxed, not distressed. Was this panic or something more surreal? Now imagine the concept of an invisible energy field. Dr. Wood proposes a chilling possibility of an energy field inside the towers, like what the military uses, which is called an active denial system, which uses microwaves to inflict pain without visible damage. Wet clothes could amplify the agony. This could be why some people were seen taking their clothes off on the ledge of the building as they were about to jump. Similar to the Dyatlov Pass, something I've talked about in the past, it's this crazy thing that happened in Siberia with these hikers that they went on this very difficult hiking trip, and it's one of the biggest mysteries in the world to this day. 9 of them, they suddenly just sprinted out of their tent in the middle of the night. A lot of them completely naked. They were taking their clothes off as they were running, and they all died in completely different, mysterious ways. But one of the theories is that the Russian government was experimenting with these microwave weapons out there, and it resembles this, where there's like inexplicable, like people taking off their clothing in a frantic fashion. But something to consider. Here's where it gets even crazier. There were a lot of missing victims. By noon of 9/11, New York City emergency rooms stopped receiving victims. Doctors were stunned. They're like, just like, where's all the people? As the TV showed total devastation, hospitals, like for the large part, stood empty. One assumed that most people escaped, but the visuals screamed that there were more casualties. And Dr. Wood sees this as part of the mystery, not just that buildings vanished, but people vanished also. And by the way, 40% of the people that died that day were either never found or never identified. Where else can you say that happened? Like even in military battles, like where there's explosions and bodies getting blown up and everything, you still recover bodies a lot of the time. There's a potential that like a lot of these bodies were just straight up evaporated into dust. If you've watched me for a while, you've heard me talk about how the CIA was trained by magicians, the whole sleight of hand thing where make people look in one direction while something's going on over here, or how easy it is to make people believe they saw things. If this happened this way, how is it that we all accepted this? Well, Dr. Wood compares it to a magic trick where we didn't see the towers fall with our eyes. We saw it on screens, narrated by anchors who shaped our perception. Like David Copperfield vanishing the Statue of Liberty, the media pulled an illusion. She even draws a parallel to the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast, where thousands of people believed that there was actually an alien invasion because they were saying it on the broadcast, making it sound realistic. If that fooled people, how easily could we have fooled people on 9/11? Another mystery, how did the bathtub survive? The bathtub is a structure beneath the towers. It's 7 stories, and it basically holds back the Hudson River because most of New York in that area is below sea level, actually. Kind of like in New Orleans when the hurricane knocked down the dams and the whole city flooded. It's like that. If this thing broke, like a large part of New York would have been flooded that day, but it didn't break. And there was actually more damage done to it during the cleanup than when the buildings fell. How the hell is that possible? Like there's no flooding that occurred. It only took in like superficial damage, and they literally damaged it more when they were cleaning up the debris than when the building actually fell. And then there's a whole train system, like subways that go underneath it, that also were undamaged and unharmed. And there was no seismic damage. We're going to talk about that later, but imagine that. There's not a seismic footprint with this that would match the size of the building. Now, if 1 million tons crashed down, why wasn't Manhattan underwater? This is one of the craziest parts. So the seismic data, the towers matched the 2.3 magnitude of the Seattle Kingdom, a 130-ton stadium, 1/4 the height and 30 times lighter. On bedrock, the towers should have shaken the earth far more. Instead, their signals lasted just 8 seconds with no clear PNS waves. PNS waves are primary waves and the first waves to arrive at the seismograph. And these were consistent with the force of the Seattle Kingdom, which is a fraction of the size. This is like as scientific and as data-driven as you could get. Why didn't it resemble the size of the building when it hit the ground? Like that means that like it was a fraction of the size when it hit the ground. The weak seismic spikes contradict both official collapse theory and the controlled demolition theory. Now, I know Richard Gage people are going to get mad about that, but hey, like, tell me why this happened. You know, like, I don't know why people are defensive about the controlled demolition theory. Like, I see there's like this cult-like following around Richard Gage. I mean, why are two sides of the truth-seeking people fighting with each other? I almost think that they want that because if you have these two groups fighting against each other, then the people who actually did this, you know, they're not being held accountable. So, like, again, there's virtually no disturbance shown in the seismographs, which is, like, as scientific as you could get. Explain that one to me. Is it even possible that it could have been controlled demolition? Dr. Wood says no. She says real demolitions hurl chunks, like chunks of metal. Like when a bomb goes off, it shoots metal all over the place. But the towers just turned into dust. No projectiles, no damage above the 20th floor of nearby buildings, no weeks of explosive prep, no miles of detonation cord, impossible in occupied surveilled towers, according to Dr. Wood. The dust clouds rose for days, not settling like typical demolition debris. Neither gravity nor bombs fit the physics of it. And here we go, dustification. Dr. Wood calls this concept dustification, where steel beams and concrete turned into dust midair. Now watch this video, like watch as I'm saying this, like look at how this thing just kind of gives in on itself in this like crazy amount of dust. Like from the moment this thing is hit, it just has dust pouring out of it. And like look at the way this cloud of dust chases people as the thing's coming down. Now, the pile of rubble was just 2% of the tower's original height, but it should have been 12 to 15% based on previous demolition results. Like that's usually the going average. It's usually 12 to 15% the original height of the structure when the building's demolished, but this one it was 2%. Again, that's pretty scientific, pretty data driven. How do you explain that one? Now, like there's videos of beams just like literally disintegrating as they fall, like trailing dust clouds, the dust finer than DNA at 0.09 to 0.26 microns, packed with glass, metals, and toxins at unprecedented levels. Now, this firefighter named Jay Jonas, trapped in Stairwell B, looked up when he was in the North Tower, and he said he saw sunlight where there was previously 106 floors above him. He's literally in the middle of the building looking up, seeing sunlight, meaning the top of the building vanished before the building came down. I don't know how it's possible unless the thing just disintegrated, and that's totally against what a demolition would look like. Then there's this giant, crazy dust cloud that rolled out like it was a volcanic wave and chasing people down Fulton Street. And they were saying it was actually cool, that the cloud was cool and not hot, but super corrosive. And an EMT named Michael Uber heard no crash, just silence as buildings turned to dust. The cloud rose for 99 days, wafting over New Jersey. ABC News even speculated that the steel turned to dust. But how could this be possible? This defies everything we know and understand about science, right? Well, hold on a second. Fuzzballs, ultrafine dust rose autonomously, defying gravity. Iron-rich microspheres like those from the Tunguska event suggest that a non-thermal magnetic field phenomenon. Not fire, not friction. Event was a massive explosion in 1908 in central Siberia in Russia, believed to have been caused by a large celestial body entering Earth's atmosphere. So another thing that we don't know a whole lot about, but created this weird phenomenon where like this abnormal dust just rises up and doesn't fall and settle the way that normal dust would rise and fall if it was a demolition or an explosion. All right, next, these holes totally defy logic. Look at this map right here. World Trade Center 5 and World Trade Center 6 had these crazy holes, these cylindrical holes that cut right through floors, perfectly carved with no debris at the bottom. And World Trade Center 6 lost half of its volume, yet little of it remained. That literally looks like a freaking laser hit them. I don't know how to explain that aside from something that we don't know about being used to do it, because like that's not from something falling through it. That's not from a fire. And by the way, fire doesn't burn hot enough to burn through things like that. And then you have these cars that they were either melted from the inside and the outside was totally fine, or the outside was melted and the inside was totally fine. Then you have some cars that like were half of it's completely melted, then the other half it's pristine and totally unharmed. And blocks of cars had like there's like 1,400 vehicles just lined up down the street where they were like warped or totally melted down or missing engines. This is the famous picture right here, this New York Police Department car that half of it's in perfect condition and half of it's like totally completely melted. So, I mean, what type of weapon do you know that could do that? We're going to get that cleared up here, but it doesn't look like something that would have been caused by fire that's happening in a building. And then we see this phenomenon where like steel beams were thinned like tissue paper, curled like tortilla chips, or rusted instantly without any heat. And then we see these pools of molten steel, like hot, that they're like turning white at like 2,800 degrees. But jet fuel burns at 1,800 degrees. And there's this building right next to the tower. It's called the Bankers Trust Building that had this like weird random gash like right in the middle of it. And every time they tried to work on it, they said that like it wasn't safe to be near it because of the toxicity levels of the building. This lady named Melissa Dole's 911 call described suffocating heat, but there was no fire there. This, again, it resembles microwave-like effects. And EMT Patricia, she said they felt cooked and witnessed a blinding flash, damage that no fire could explain. If you look at this chart right here, if this is from the book, it shows that like at what temperature fire becomes white hot. Like that's bizarre. Yeah, you got the thermite theories. I've heard the thermite theories, and that could be true, but you know, maybe they did a bunch of different things to kind of throw us off. Dr. Judy Wood uses this great example in her book of perceptual blind spots. In 1942, this pilot named Jack Willems flew a jet in a gorilla suit. Like he was wearing a gorilla suit, flying a jet. He was flying like near another jet to where people could see him on the commercial airline. Like that doesn't sound too safe, but he got close enough to them where he was like waving at them. They were waving back, and no one reported it because it didn't fit their reality. Dr. Wood says that we missed 9/11's impossibilities for that same reason, that we see what we're conditioned to believe. Now, you might be asking by this time, what could cause steel to just melt and collapse on itself the way that it did? And why wasn't this other stuff damaged? Like, why weren't plastics and rubbers and paper material damaged? But like every bit of steel and iron and metal was damaged or melted or exploded. There's this crazy thing. I guess you could call it the Tesla Hutchinson connection, because Tesla stumbled onto this technology when he was doing his thing back in the day. And then this guy named Hutchinson accidentally stumbled upon the same thing that Tesla was doing. So I'm going to show you in this video right here. But basically what he was able to do was change the core physical components of steel and make it weak enough to just like melt in on itself. So like, look at this video right here. There's this block of iron just folds in on itself and turns into like weak rubber looking material. I don't know. Could this have been done to the thing? And look how the guy says in here. He says it looked like it starts smoking, but it could have been dustifying. With the towers, the steel glowed without heat, curled like ribbons, and showed residual magnetic fields. All hallmarks of the Hutchinson effect, linked to Tesla's longitudinal waves. Metal jellified and materials fused unnaturally. Was this a weaponized relic of Tesla's genius? I think it could be. This is the craziest one, I think, of all. Did you know that there was a freaking hurricane off the coast of New York on 9/11?
You can see on the edge of your screen here, this is the outer bands here of Hurricane Erin. Looks dangerously close to the U.S. mainland.
For 4 days, it was going straight towards Manhattan, no land masses in between. Stopped.
Suddenly, it takes a sharp right turn and scoots off out into the Atlantic.
Literally reported for duty, and then it went off.
It's a Category 3 hurricane, bigger than Hurricane Katrina, and it starts off, way down, like in the south, heading towards the Florida area, hooks a right, goes all the way up to New York, and then pauses on the day of 9/11, sits there, and then hooks right again and goes north, out of the way. Nobody ever heard about it. Nobody talked about this thing. And this is a verified thing, like I'm showing you right now. This was studied by NASA's CAMX-4. It was ignored by the media. Like, look, there's this clip here of them talking about it one day and then totally ignoring it the other day. Like, oh, bright and sunny day.
Rain yesterday afternoon, now well offshore, just a little bit making its way off the Outer Banks. No rain today or tomorrow. Cloud cover, too, with that cold front is making its way offshore, too. So we're going to have just a beautiful day today.
Nothing to see here. Like, there's a hurricane going on, like where it's touching Cape Cod. It's literally raining in Cape Cod and harsh winds in Cape Cod because of how close it is to the shore. But nobody's talking about this thing. It's a perfect sunny day in New York. Nobody's reporting on it. That creates all kinds of crazy questions. The way this thing just veered away, I mean, I ask this rhetorically, of course, but I don't know, could we have been able to control hurricanes going back this far? Imagine if people found that out. Like, all the damage has been inflicted by hurricanes. We can control them this whole time. Everybody acknowledges that Hurricane Erin's path is bizarre. It reached maximum strength and closest proximity to New York City on the morning of 9/11, then veered away sharply later that afternoon. The strange timing raises questions among researchers about why there was no alert or public discussion. And if that's not crazy enough for you, there was anomalous magnetic spikes synced with 9/11's events. Magnetometers in northern Alaska recorded anomalous disturbances in Earth's magnetic field exactly at the times when World Trade Center towers were hit and collapsed, suggesting a possible correlation between electromagnetic events and the destruction. About 20 minutes before the plane struck World Trade Center Tower 1, the Earth's magnetic field began a noticeable decline. Look at this chart right here, and then sharply reversed direction right at the moment of impact. These magnetic disturbances coincide perfectly with World Trade Center 2 and World Trade Center 7. Right when they go poof. When Tower 2 and Tower 7 collapsed, additional sharp deviations were recorded, implying a possible non-conventional energy phenomenon. There's an analogy with the Tesla coil. Dr. Judy Wood draws a comparison between Hurricane Erin, which was sitting off the coast of New York City on 9/11, and the Tesla coil, implying that the hurricane may have played a role in modulating or channeling electromagnetic energy for whatever they did. Sounds insane, but it's also equally insane that there was a giant hurricane off the coast of New York that day that nobody talked about, and then it just disappeared right after that day. Like, I get it, guys. I get that it sounds crazy that they derived power and energy from a hurricane to channel a direct energy weapon to melt the towers or turn them into dust, but I mean, it's also crazy that the Earth's magnetic field fundamentally changed and shifted in a drastic, noticeable way, and that there was this hurricane that nobody talked about. When the Weather Channel loves talking about hurricanes, they were acting like it's a bright and sunny day there, didn't mention the hurricane on the weather, and that it just like sits there at maximum strength the day 9/11 happens, and then poof, vanishes. That's also weird. You know, you have to answer why one happened in order to debunk the other one. If you don't buy this theory, tell me why this was happening, okay? The magnetic field effects were not localized to New York. The magnetic field data used came from 6 stations in Alaska and Canada, far from New York City, yet still showed correlated fluctuations, raising questions about global electromagnetic interactions during the attacks. The path of Hurricane Erin exhibited magnetometer fluctuations that aligned almost precisely with its changes in course, suggesting some kind of external manipulation or coordination between the storm's movement and the Earth's magnetic field. That's pretty scientific, guys. I don't like if that's not science, then what is science? Like we're talking Earth's magnetic field and we're talking magnometers, all right? And the unusual behavior of the hurricane, like they hardly ever do this. The Hurricane Erin traveled nearly perpendicular to the U.S. East Coast, totally rare trajectory, and it accelerated as if it was getting in the groove, reinforcing the theory that it was being guided or influenced. Like normally they get weaker when they're going in that direction, but this one was building momentum as it was going towards it. And there was magnetic sphere disruptions on 9/11. The bright green zones on the hurricane track map indicated unusual magnetometer activity peaking on September 11th, implying that large-scale electromagnetic interference may have been active during the tower destruction. There seem to be 2 rivaling theories here. I think the vast majority of people don't believe that fire from the planes is what caused the building to go down the way it did, but there seems to be competing theories between the Richard Gage camp and the Judy Wood camp. Here's a little summary of what the 2 of them think. Richard Gage is the founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, argues that the towers were destroyed through controlled demolition using explosives. He supports this theory with several key points, like rapid collapse speeds. The tower fell at near free fall acceleration, which he claims is consistent with demolition rather than a natural collapse. And he says the molten evidence of molten metal in the rubble suggests temperatures far exceeding what jet fuel could produce. And eyewitness accounts reports of explosions before and during the collapses, which bolster his case. Gage asserts that the official explanation fails to account for these observations, and he believes pre-planned explosives were used to bring the buildings down. Now, Judy Wood's position is that as a materials engineer scientist, she thinks that direct energy weapons were used to take down the buildings, and she uses the evidence of zero resistance, zero friction, like the falling in 10 seconds and it should have taken like 90 seconds, and only 2% of the materials being there when it's usually like 15% of the height. Normally, there's 15% of the total height of the building that's left after demolition. There's only 2% left, and there's no structural damage to the very delicate bath under the building, which keeps water from flowing in from the Hudson River. And then there were all these weird spots too where people survived somehow. Then you have the guy who was in the building, saw sunlight as he was in the building, meaning indicating that the top of the building disintegrated before the bottom of the building gave out. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that both of these things could have happened at once. Like there could have been bombs that went off in the building that assisted in this, but I don't know. It's weird how little attention Judy Wood's theory gets because I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Andrew, my book club, who has really been pushing for me to talk about this topic. And I never knew about it. I never thought about this one too much. Start reading this book and I'm like, wow, like this is a scientific based argument and we got to talk about this. I'm going to try and interview Judy Wood. And if you guys want to know more about this book, definitely jump in the book club. It's a crazy one. And, we kind of just hit the tip of the iceberg here, but if you want to do deep dives like this and interact with people who are interested in stuff like this, that's what the book club is for. Here's a QR code for that. The link is below and in the description and in the comment section. If you want to know more about this, jump in there, and it helps me a lot if you jump in the book club and support. If you want to know more theories about 9/11, because there's a lot of them, so many that I made an iceberg about it, where I talk about like the least crazy theories to the most crazy theories. So if you want to check that video out, it is right here. And as always, thank you for watching.